Welcome back to the Healthy Wealth Experience. I'm your host, Chris Hall. We talk a lot about building wealth, but today we are talking about how to protect it. Joining us is Madison Kopta, a registered legal document assistant and the force behind the trust division at Redding Trust and Insurance Company. Madison specializes in helping families avoid the death tax of time and money known as probate. She makes the complex world of revocable living trusts accessible, affordable, and most importantly, effective. Madison, welcome to the show. Let's dive into why a trust is the ultimate health insurance for your family's legacy.
Let's dive in. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So for you, full disclosure for you guys, so Madison and I have known each other for almost 2 years now, and I really sort of started helping her get this business off the ground because I could see the potential that she had for it, and I could see the potential for, in our town specifically, in most towns really, for what's happening in the trust department. So first and foremost, just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you ended up in this genre.
Well, it kind of all started 10 years ago, right outside of high school, which I wouldn't have realized at the time. But I worked for an attorney here locally. Locally for me here is Redding. But I worked for an attorney for 2 years, and that was great. But that turned into nothing. I didn't move forward with that at the time. It was just a job. And then fast forward 10, 15 years. I say 10 years, but I think that's being a little generous. Anyways, fast forward to now. I meet you, start working with you, and you had come to me with the idea for your financial advising firm about doing estate planning and trust stuff. And you know what? I got to be really honest with you, Christopher. I did not see the vision.
Okay, that's right.
I didn't see the vision. So it took like a year to get me on board, I want to say, right?
That seems fair.
I did it, but before I was like, do this.
Right. That's why the name of it is Redding Trust and Insurance Company, because in the beginning,
I was an insurance agent.
You were sure that the route you were going to go was mostly going to be insurance since you're a licensed insurance agent. Mm-hmm. And that's why that's put in there. That was sort of like our compromise on like moving forward with it. Does that sound right?
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. But then as we started offering the estate stuff, you kind of did the first trust, showed me how to do it. And by trust, I mean, he showed me how to do like the paperwork and all that and the software for making a trust for someone. So you showed me how to do it. So anyway, I am going to school now, but at the time I was looking at going back to school and thinking about being a paralegal. Long story short, led me to learn that because I worked for a lawyer all those years ago, I actually qualified to become an LDA. So we got licensed and bonded. And that's when I really started to learn about the process and what we can do for people. And it's legally obligated to tell you first and foremost, I am in no way an attorney. I am not a lawyer yet, but I cannot give legal advice. Essentially, I'm a paralegal, but I don't work under an attorney. So I'm independent. I work for myself, whereas a paralegal would be employed by a lawyer. And what you can get with me is I just assist you in filling out all the documents that you need to get things done.
So this is the kind of the in my opinion, the take on where Redding Trust fits here in town. And they charged them $5,000 to do the trust. And then 6 months later, they had to do an amendment. And instead of doing an amendment, they charged them $2,000 to restart the trust, so to restate it. So it was like $7,000 for this thing. And then you have the other end of the spectrum, which is there are plenty of legal documents online that you can get to do these kinds of things. And I felt like the way that you were positioned was that you have the expertise to help them fill the documents out in this genre, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're not an expert in every legal document, but these ones you are an expert in, and you become an expert in them even every day, even more. So people can reach out to you for help on these, and then they're not going to pay those exorbitant lawyer fees, but they're also not going to be stuck doing it completely by themselves with no guidance. So Would you agree that that's kind of like where you sit on the spectrum?
Chris, you just are, that was the Oxford Dictionary version of what I do.
All right.
It could not have been put more eloquently.
Okay.
But yeah, so basically, a lot of times you don't need an attorney and you can totally do it yourself. And this is not just, a lot of people do need attorneys, and attorneys are very important, and that's why we have them. But in a lot of cases, you just need to put your house in your trust and avoid probate. And that's where I come into play as a good middle player. I don't want to say like budget option, but I'm a good.
I think the word they use in business is affordable.
I'm an affordable option.
So no, to kind of add to that though, to kind of like talk about it is like, I've seen you in business. I've seen you've gotten clients who are looking for very high end type things within their trust that carry over into other legal items. And I've watched you refer those out. Like, hey, listen, based on your conversation that we've had, this doesn't look like something that I'm going to be able to help you with. Let me give you this person's name or whatever.
Right.
That to me is like probably one of the coolest things about like your business model. And then also the fact that you offer a free 15-minute consultation to make sure that you're the right fit for them.
That's fun. A lot of times people don't know. They don't know going into it what they need, any of that. And so you don't even know what to Google even. While, yes, you can absolutely DIY your own estate documents. It's a lot of estate documents and a lot of things that most people just aren't familiar with day to day because it's not in layman's terms. It's in legalese, and, with a trust.
Why not a will instead of a trust?
Well, want to be like, a will doesn't do anything, which a will doesn't do anything. A very wise businessman once told me, it was Chris, everyone, that a will is like directing traffic for probate. So you have it, they know maybe what you want, but if it's not notarized, they can't like prove that you wrote it, or I don't know all the legal factions behind it, but a will is just going to kind of tell people what you want, but a trust is going to stop traffic and say, this is where everything actually needs to go. It's official. It doesn't go through probate. It's not public. Exactly who you want things to go to goes exactly to those people. It's a safeguard for you legally when you need it. And a safeguard for the people who are going to be executing things for you, because it gets nasty in probate court. But when people are dividing up estates, it gets
So for those who are listening who don't understand what probate is, and again, so a will may work. You have to talk to your local attorney. But in California, a will, exactly what Madison said, is it directs traffic. You're still going to go to probate. So the first question I would want to ask is like, what's probate? So probate is a process that the government puts in to basically say, okay, so-and-so has passed away. They have these assets. We're going to make sure the assets go to the right people. Okay, that's probate. So by having a will, you're not avoiding probate. You're just making sure your wishes are known as you go into it. So will is better than nothing. Right? Because if you have nothing, then you are truly dependent on the government to get rid of your assets and move it to the right people. And that can be really tough. Again, Madison says a lot of people arguing in court right now because someone didn't write down, mom said I could have this. No, mom said I could have it. That's something we want to avoid. So a will would help with that. But as far as like avoiding probate altogether, that's where the trust comes in. I think it's really important for people to understand that even if you direct traffic and go to probate costs are exorbitant. It is a tax on your estate. People don't look at it that way, but it is absolutely on your estate.
So let's say you own a $400,000 home, and you pass away. That home and all of your stuff, that's all going to be decided upon in court. The government obviously wants to know how much money they can get out of it. So if you don't have a trust where, like we said, a will, really doesn't do anything in terms of protecting you, where a trust does protect you. If you go into probate because that house wasn't in a trust, that $1,000 home, you could end up paying $22,000 or exorbitant fees just to get everyone everything that you already wanted them to have. I mean, most people already need it, or that time would come. They don't take care of it, and it can just be really costly for the family who has to take care of it. And not to mention the financial side. If you don't have it in a trust, then it's left up to your family who's going to fight over where everything goes and who gets what. I mean, hopefully you don't have a family who does that, but more often than not, that's what we end up seeing in the office.
I would say as a financial advisor for 10 years that money is one of the things that will absolutely separate a family. And I think it's really important that people ahead of time know their wishes of the people that they're getting their money from. And I think that, trust is a great way to do it because you can avoid the probate. But at the very, very minimum, people should have something written down as how they want it. But to avoid probate costs, which again, I'll say it again, I said it before, probate costs is a tax on an estate. Okay. It's the government's way of taking a little bit out of your estate as they help you just gently push it over to the right people. And here's the other thing that's important to know. If you have a trust, the transfer of assets from one generation to the next is, like maybe we're talking like 2 or 3 weeks, depending on how long it takes to get a death certificate. But in a will or a no will, if you have to go through the probate process, you're talking minimum 6 months. But I've seen people go 4 years. If they're fighting over it, you're going to see people go 4 years. One of the things I think about is like as a business owner, if you don't have all the things in place as a business owner, because that's what I cater to as business owners in my practice. But if you don't have it in place and you pass away, if you don't leave the right people in charge, like if you don't have powers of attorney set up, they can't access your bank account. They can't pay your payroll. I mean, you could see a company that's been around for 30 years go non-existent in 2 weeks. Try to see how long people will stay with you if you don't pay them. So it's a huge deal. I think people don't understand in business how much they need a trust because they need to let somebody know, hey, if something happens to me, you're in charge of this. You gotta pay these people. You gotta make sure these jobs get done, etc. So that's to me huge.
Well, to that, and I'm sorry for interrupting you, but
no, please, this is your interview.
Oh,
yeah,
it's definitely within reach of everyone promoting it. So to speak, I'm definitely like, don't do it.
I think it's important for people to know that they have options, but then once you clarify the options, it becomes pretty obvious that you should get some help.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, with what I do as a financial advisor, it's not like people couldn't learn to do what I do, but I can also re-roof my house. I just don't want to. I definitely, that's the last thing I want to do. So I think it's just about going with people who are really good at what they do and will carry it all the way for you. Instead of like we're talking about, I was like, you get the paperwork done, but if you don't do the rest and you don't file correctly, you shouldn't have done the paperwork. So that's important. We focus on healthy wealth here. One of the things I talk about specifically is like, you're not wealthy unless you're also healthy. Like you can have a lot of money, but if you don't feel good, you don't take good care of yourself. How does having a solid estate plan impact the client's mental and emotional well-being, in your opinion?
Well, I know from personal experience with clients who've had particularly difficult family members and things like that and how they want things distributed in the future. And once the trust is done, then it's just kind of done. There isn't anything to argue over. And the relief of having that stress off of them is typically pretty immense and substantial. And
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. I've seen that in my practice too. I feel like a lot of people, they don't want to do a trust because they have this like weird, like if I do it, then I'm going to die, like one of those kinds of things. Same reason people won't do life insurance. It's just like weird, like self-fulfilling prophecies type of thing. But I've seen the other side of it. I've seen where people were like really nervous about what's going to go on, going to fight over it. They've got one kid who's like great, and they got another kid who's like not so great. And they just don't know how it's going to go. And then you saying, and just the sigh of relief that comes with that, I think it's huge. So, yeah.
You can't argue over it.
Right.
Decided.
Well, and now, so that's a good point too. People actually can argue once these things are done, right? So someone passes away and there is like someone says, I think I should have gotten more. They can argue it. They can get a lawyer and they can file a lawsuit about that.
Yeah. But again, then like you said, you're filing a lawsuit. It's not, someone would have to take you to court to contest it. And a lot of times what we have written in, and in most documents, this clause is written in, and I don't know what the clause is specifically, but we have it in each trust that if you contest the trust, you're automatically out. So in order to get anything from it, they would have to know they're going to win to contest it and then be able to afford a lengthy court process. So it's just so much more security.
Right. By the way, that is called a no contest clause. Of course.
It's a big one.
Makes perfect sense, right? So, and I do believe that most trusts have that in there. But People can still fight for it if they want to, but I
Mhm.
feel like I think that was a great thing. Like you fight it, you better know you're going to win because most no contest clause basically say if you fight it, you're out. You
Yeah.
don't get anything.
Right.
So, which is pretty crazy. What about like, situations where someone has like their kids and stuff? Like, how does that work in the trusts? So, a trust isn't just for someone who passes away. How does it protect a person while they're still alive, but perhaps unable to make their own health or financial decisions?
So in our trust packages, and we also offer these separate as well, we have whoever you choose, and this doesn't have to be the same as the trust, the ability to make decisions for you, your financial decisions while you're still alive, but if you get incapacitated, so if you can't make decisions for yourself. And that's the same for the healthcare directive, but that's for your healthcare decisions if you're still alive, but can't make decisions for yourself. So then someone can make your medical decisions. And all these people can be different people. So if there's someone who, say you don't believe is as good with money, just because, maybe they're the executor of your trust or you've chosen to leave your small children with them, doesn't mean that you also need to make them in charge of your finances as well. So I think the great thing about having a
Good point.
trust, thank you. I think the good thing about having a trust and these estate documents is that you now just have total control and are able to make specific decisions how you want things laid out that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
Right. Right. That's true. One of the things that when you're talking, it made me think of like in my own situation is, like I have a daughter who's 21 and I have a son who's 18. And it dawned on me, like, as my son gets ready to potentially, go to college away from home, is that, if he were to get into some sort of car accident or have some sort of medical issue happen, like, I literally can't talk to the doctor about him. Like
Hmm.
I can't talk, like they won't talk. I could talk to them, but they won't talk to me because
Hmm.
he's an adult. And so like talking about healthcare directives and powers of attorneys, if you've got some young adults in your life still and they can't run their own life yet because they're still young,
Hmm.
these are other documents. You said you would do those for people as well. And I think
Yes.
that's another encouraging thing is like, if you have somebody who's like 18 to 25 and you're pretty like into do it, like both my kids like immediately were like, absolutely, we want you to be in charge of our health and finances. That's something that they should look into as a parent, because can you imagine getting in a car accident and your kid gets hurt? Law firm. How does your process at Rain Trust make this essential step easier for the average family? So one of the things I noticed, like kind of watching, you work in your practice, is that you have these experiences with traditional high-priced law firms, and in my opinion, it's a lot of like effort, right? You got to go meet with them, you got to fill out these things, and you got to come back, and you got to do it again, and you got to do, and it feels to me like a lot of it's sort of built up because they know how much they're charging you. How would you say the experience differs when someone uses like an LDA or someone like yourself?
Well, I can't speak for other LDAs and how they run their businesses. For Reading Trust, and as for myself, we do packages, so I don't charge hourly, um, which definitely keeps the prices down.
So can you think of any examples of like situations where, someone, um, came to you guys and they had some such situation that was bad, and then you were able to like kind of navigate them through that and help them along the way?
Actually, yes, we had a client whose dad was very sick. So they called us because they needed the trust done really fast. They needed the whole package done. And we were able to get it done and to the recorder's office within a week because they were afraid if their dad passed, their mom, who he wasn't divorced from but separated with, would not be a good steward of the finances kind of situation. So they needed it done really fast. And because we are an LDA group and not attorneys, we are able to do things pretty quick, which is really nice for people who need it done really fast, which can be some urgent situations that people can get into, unfortunately.
Now, so that kind of sparked a little question for me on this is
Mhm.
like, have you ever run into a situation of a life estate? Have you had that
No.
yet? Okay.
Mm-mm.
So in my practice, you'll see something where somebody wants to not leave their spouse, like this typically like anything to their current spouse, but they don't want to. So
Mhm.
it's called a life estate. And if you're listening to this and you're in this type of situation, you can say, hey, listen, I want this property to go to my kids, but while my XYZ person is alive, they can live there for free as long as they, pay the taxes and paint the
I
house.
didn't know it was called a life estate. I referred to it as a sub-trust. And I just did that for a client where they aren't legally married, but she wants everything to go to her kids from if he's younger. She wants him to be able to live out his days in their house that's in her name. So that's how we navigated that.
Nice. It's called sub-trust.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, that's what
I've only ever heard of it called a life estate, but
okay.
I'm not a lawyer either, and I don't do this as much as you do. That's for sure.
That's just how I heard it referred to as a sub-trust, but that of course could be wrong as well.
Honestly, it's probably like Ford versus Chevy.
Right.
They're both. All right. So this is the Healthy Wealth Experience. And one of the things we like to talk to people about is their health as well as like their wealth. What do you do in your life for your physical and mental well-being?
Well, as you've liked to point out to me repeatedly, I don't eat well. So that's not it.
What's next for you? What are you working on right now that's going to grow your business or your health?
So I am working on a $33 package where we offer the power of attorney and the healthcare directive for $33. And that, of course, is a lower touch offer, but people can give us their information. They fill out a questionnaire. We have all the information that we need, and then we're able to fill it out and produce a power of attorney and a healthcare directive. And with those, we aren't able to help them get them notarized, but we can give instructions on how to do that. And you should get them notarized, but you don't need to get them notarized for them to be legally compliant, those two forms. And we talk about all that. But that's my next project right now, which is just to make getting these documents extremely accessible to everyone because everyone needs them.
Right. Absolutely. And again, so if you have, in my opinion, if you have a home or business or something like that, you should definitely have some sort of trust to put your home into so it can avoid probate. But if let's say you don't have a home, but you what's called TODs, transfers on death, PODs, payable on death actions. And so just to make sure that your stuff is going from one place to the next. But I think like the $33 thing for healthcare directives and power of attorney, first of all, that's a tremendous price. I don't know how you're making any money on that at all, Amber. But with that being said, that's a really good deal for people who don't have the need for a trust. Like what a great thing to make sure that they still have their care taken care of or their bank accounts taken care of. So that's good. That's a really cool thing. So we'll make sure to link to that in the description. And then also I kind of mentioned it earlier, but I know Maddie specifically does free phone consultations. She can jump on Zoom with you either. It's very easy to schedule with her. I know that you just go to her website and there's like a schedule free consultation thing where you fill out a couple things and she can usually, I think that's a good thing. Like it kind of comes down to like, hey, here are the things that I need. And then she can say, okay, you're going to need a lawyer or you're not going to need a lawyer. I got everything that you need right here. And place to start. Whereas typically speaking, if you go to a lawyer, the meeting. And so Maddie doesn't charge you for the meeting, which I think is really cool. Anything else that you want to talk about before we end?
No, I don't think so. Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, yeah, of course. Anytime. It's exciting to have you here. But again, like I think the most of the viewers is to know that like if you go with someone like Maddie, you're going to get a good product, good result at a good price. But if you don't go with Maddie, what I'm going to tell you is just like you got to get this done. Like these are things that people sit on and sit on and sit on. And I can tell you as a financial advisor, when someone passes in the family and they have a trust, it is so easy to move the assets from one person to the next. When somebody passes away and there is no trust, it is a nightmare. Logistical nightmare. It is a paperwork nightmare. It's going to cost you thousands and thousands of dollars in probate costs. And so again, Ready Trust and Insurance Company, totally recommend them. We're recommending to my clients, recommend to anybody listening. But if you don't want to go with Maddie and you have someone local, that's fine. If you want to do that, I'm just saying like, do it. That's the most important part of this is do it. It's for your own well-being. And again, I think the coolest part about Ready Trust and Insurance Company is that Maddie does it for such a reasonable price. So, and then what are you charging these days for the state package?
$1,500.
Wow, that's incredible. So that's probably half to 75% off what you would pay to go to an attorney, right? That's pretty incredible. So, okay, you guys get your trusts. All right. Get your trust, get your trust, get your trust. That's what I'm going to say. Until then, please remember that the algorithm loves it when you guys interact with this. So subscribe, comment, share, those kinds of things. And again, if you have questions for me or Madison, put them in the comments and we'll be happy to come in and answer those for you as we see them. So let us know if you have questions. Also, let me know if there's any topics that you want to talk about. things that we haven't touched on that you think, oh, that'd be interesting. I'd love to know more about that. That helps me when I go to find my guests. So thank you all for listening. And until then, we'll see you next time.
See ya. Thank you.